Hey everybody, Charlie here from Epic Dice Studio, and today we are doing another random chatter. And today I want to talk to you about Warmachine. Now, for those of you that follow my Facebook page, you saw that I had recently posted pictures of some cricks that I was going to be playing Mike with for 50 points, and I was going to film the battle report. Unfortunately, the DSLR that I have has a very poor battery life. I've never actually used it for filming video. And it turned out we only got about 2 hours worth of video on it. And then when I switched over to my GoPro, which is what you're watching me on now, the GoPro was like 90% filled, and then it eventually also ran out before we had time to finish up. We were both playing newish armies. I'm familiar with most of my force, but I was not familiar with Terminus, who was the caster I was using, and Mike was bringing his Convergence of Cyrus, which I am not familiar with at all, and Mike, who normally plays Khador, was kind of iffy on it. So the game was going to go long. Anyway, turns out the battery died, so the game was kind of a moot point after a while. We finished it up. I won. Luckily, it was so close, but I won. But after the game, Mike and I started talking about Warmachine, and so I thought, if I had the battery, maybe the two of us could have done this on camera. But unfortunately, it's the next day, so now I'm still with the thoughts fresh in my head. I want to talk to you about Warmachine. And I'm not going to talk to you like a game professional. I try to safely assume that everybody out there that plays these games, the majority of you play them because either A, they're cool looking, and B, they're fun, And, sometimes it's a combination of the two. And that's always a plus. So, everything that I talk about in this is purely opinion. There is no facts. I didn't do any kind of serious research. I looked a few things up in the book. But otherwise, this is just purely based on my knowledge, on the game itself, my experience with the game, through its iterations from Mark 1 up to Mark 3, and with the amount of playtime I've put into it, what I've learned and what I have come to begin to dislike about the game. This is not necessarily a rant to say that I don't like Warmachine, but I feel at the end of it you'll at least get the idea, because I'm titling this, is Warmachine dying? I don't mean that in the literal sense that the game is going away off of shelves, Privateer Press is failing. Not at all. I don't even think they're a publicly traded company, so it's not like we could see if they're being successful or not. This is more of like, is this game dying in my eyes because I'm finding things within this game that I'm no longer enjoying, and I want to share that with you. Okay, so a little backstory first. You're going to need a little bit of this to which I hope you will help you understand where I come from as far as the gaming world goes. My miniature experience started with BattleTech at first, and then moved into a board game for the Aliens movie. I believe it was Leading Edge Games, and it was essentially a double-sided fold-up sheet of paper that had specific scenes from the Aliens movie in it, and you got to play as little cardboard cutouts of said heroes, Ripley, all this other kind of stuff. And I realized as I was playing this game that the idea of having toy soldiers with rules on how to move them and how to roll dice for them was great. So got from BattleTech into Aliens, and then that eventually spawned into my liking of Dungeons and Dragons, the whole fantasy aspect, playing a game of imagination with my friends. We were little kids. Growing up, we played cowboys and Indians. I was a kid of the 80s, so for all you millennials or whatever, yeah, that's what we did as kids. We'd run around the backyard pointing guns or pointing sticks at each other, yelling at us, you're dead. We didn't have the population or the overpopulation of Nerf guns or airsoft that you do today. So yeah, Dungeons and Dragons, video games, and BattleTech. That was essentially those kind of got me into the gaming addiction tabletop especially. And then my first real miniature game that I bought myself was Warhammer 40K. And the reason why I fell in love with Warhammer 40K, which was second edition at the time, mid-90s, it was the fluff behind it really captured my interest. You know, like as I said with Aliens, the 40K had Space Marines. They were genetically engineered. They were not just normal, really cool Marines in space. They were something special. The Space Marines that I knew of from Aliens were more like Imperial Guard. And the fluff in there was just fantastic. I was hooked. I had my Space Marines, I had my Imperial Guard, and I had my aliens in the form of the Tyranids. Boom! 40K is life. Let's do this. Eventually, due to financial arrangements, I ended up having to get out of the hobby for a while. I came back, and during this comeback is when I got into Warmachine Mark II. The thing that lured me into Warmachine was the fact that you could buy the Mark II book for probably at the time $40, maybe $35 to $45, and then you buy the starter pack for a starter box for an army was $30 to $40, and you had a perfectly playable game right there. You and your buddy each spend about $100, and you have everything you need to play a game. Unlike 40K, the box sets for Warmachine were perfectly balanced with each other. You could just basically build from there and have competitive armies. You were good to go. It worked. Time progresses. I start buying extra armies for myself, and mainly to help convince some of my gaming friends that this game is cool to play. It was much less expensive compared to 40K, which my friends knew I liked. But here were other games that they could get in on an entrance level and not have to spend that much. Also, the rules compared to 40K were much lighter. They were not nearly as complicated and convoluted. And so, by me buying multiple armies and influencing my friends, I got people to play the game. Time goes on, and out comes Mark III. Privateer Press says, hey, we're making some changes. We're rebuilding the whole thing from the ground floor up, and now we have Mark III, which was out last year. So now it'll be about a year and a half since I'm recording this in October of 2017, if you're watching this at a much later date. It is now 2017, and I am finding that Warmachine has got two big things. They're big to me. Like I said, this is all just an opinion type show. Two big things for me that I'm finding I'm not liking. I'm not saying they're terrible, but there's just something about it that's hitting me the wrong way. All right, so first thing that has started to rub me the wrong way is the story and the tone for Warmachine. When I first got into Warmachine, I went in for the cost and the cool factor. It was cheap, and the Warcasters looked really, really cool, and the big monsters at the time, which were the Jacks, were something that I hadn't seen before. Yeah, they were kind of Dreadnought-like from 40K, but the idea behind them, steam-powered and everything, really caught my attention. On top of that, while playing D&D, my DM had picked up the Iron Kingdoms, I think it was a 3-part module, that dealt with, it was called the Witchblade Trilogy, and it dealt with Alexia Cianor, who we know from Crix, and her rise to power, capturing the Witchblade, resurrecting her mom, and all this other kind of stuff, all this drama around her character. And when I had found, when I found out that, the D&D version of the game, which was the D20 version at the time, the story arc behind that helped me get into the game. When I got the book, I read about the 4 big players, Khador, Menoth, Signar, and Crix. You had 3 middling good guys and the poster boy for evil, which is the undead of Crix. Perfectly fine. It makes sense. It blended the fantasy element of Dungeons and Dragons and then mixed in the technological part of like steampunk, and there was a very, very good balance that made the fluff it made sense. Later on, when I was starting to read into Hordes, mainly for the rules, because again, the models looked really cool, I kind of got the same idea. You had your Trollbloods, Scorn, and Ouroboros, who were the three kind of good guys, but they had their own bad parts, and Everblight was the poster child for evil in that setting. That one went more into the D&D fantasy area, because they got rid of the science and magical armor, and went with wild magical beasts that you could now control. To relegate it back to my 40K reference, our Games Workshop reference, it's a matter of fact of like Warmachine was Privateer Press's version of 40K, and Hordes was GW's version, or was Privateer Press's version of GW's Warhammer Fantasy. Same pseudo universe. They could play well together compared to GW's two brands who didn't mix, but my thought process, which maybe other people might think the same thing, thought process is there. Technology versus the overall tone made sense. Later on, they added new armies. For Warmachine specifically, they went more into the fantasy arc, and they brought the elves into what was predominantly a human-run world. We knew a little bit from the fluff, and at the time, I think there were mercenaries out at the time. We knew that there were dwarves and elves of various types in this world, but they did not have a starring role. Privateer Press reaches out and brings us the Retribution of Syra, which is the elf army. The trouble for me came with the next army after that, which was the Convergence of Cyrus. My problem being that you took a fantasy world that had what I thought, like I said, it had a very good balance, and then you went to the extreme of having sci-fi added. It was too science fiction. We're going to have people that are going to become the warcasters by sacrificing their mortal bodies and imprinting themselves or transplanting themselves into machines. So you're taking, for more modern ideas, you're taking RoboCop. You're bringing the Borg from Star Trek. Basically the Terminator. You're basically bringing the Terminator and all these other sci-fi tropes that we are now familiar with from the 80s and the 90s and the aughts. You're bringing it into the game, and in my opinion, it was to compete against the more sci-fi aspect that was Games Workshop's 40K. But the more that I looked into it, there was just something about it that started to nag at me. All the models are ugly. Now, you can't get me wrong. I would believe that we all agree that Warjacks in Warmachine are very silly looking, almost to the point of ugly. I'm sure you've all have seen the meme or whatever or heard the meme that essentially all Warjacks are bodybuilders that skipped leg day, because their legs are nice and scrawny, but they got these uber powerful torsos and arms ready to just kick all kinds of ass. The Cyrus, in my opinion, they have these little bitty spider legs, because most of them that I've seen are four-legged, and then they're just a box, which is the reason why I brought up the Borg, because the Borg chose Borg cubes, and if I remember correctly, I'm not that huge of a Star Trek fan, if I remember correctly, the reason why the Borg chose a cube is because it was the most pragmatic way to get the most efficient work out of their drones, etc., etc. So a lot of their heavy jacks are essentially big squares with little individually squiggly legs. And they have a few of the little floater drones, which look kind of cool. But otherwise, it's still the idea is that we have robots, not magic. They're more of a robot feel versus a magically powered or a magically infused, steam-driven machine. Then that's what the Warjacks are. Privateer Press took too much sci-fi and brought it in. So I've never really been a fan of the Cyrus. And now, This year, they've come out with a new army for, I believe it's Hordes. The models look fantastic. They are awesome. They are the Grimkin. Basically, nightmares made manifest. The only kind of fluff that I read was the stuff that Privateer Press was putting out in their press releases and off of their website to basically advertise, hey, this is coming out soon, here's a preview picture, and here's some minor story. What I got from it was essentially that way back upon the time of creation, the creator or creators, if there's more than one, if it's a polytheistic versus a monotheistic creator universe, there were those spirits or minor gods that basically rebelled against the powers that be and somehow managed to escape any form of punishment, and now those rebel spirits are manifesting themselves on this world of Warmachine and Hordes. Okay, I kind of get that. But then I started seeing the models, and even though they are awesome looking, it's now 2017, and there is a game out there that has a very strong following that's called Malifaux. And it has almost the exact same, not design, that's the wrong word, and I'm not saying Privateer Press is, no one's infringing on anyone's copyrights or IP. But if you wanted to play twisted representations of spirits, emotions, or whatever, go play Malifaux. They have their own army. They're the universal. I think they are the universal poster boys for evil, for being the bad guys in Malifaux. Now it seems that Privateer Press has gone the opposite. We're going into dark fantasy. We went totally sci-fi over here, and now we're going to the other end of going too much into fantasy, and we're going too dark. Where they were competing against Games Workshop by bringing in robots, it's like, oh, now it feels like we're getting a little nervous with Malifaux's popularity. We need to bring these into the fold so that we have our own brand of twisted nightmares. So they bring in the Grimkin, and like I said, the models are fantastic looking, much better looking than Cyrus. But my problem is the fact that you're bringing in something that I feel wasn't necessary. You're breaking the tone of what makes Warmachine Warmachine. You're losing the you're losing the fantasy and steampunk just to grab a flavor of the month that everyone wants. Kind of like on TV, where as soon as The Walking Dead took off, everything was zombies. Zombie this, zombie... And it got oversaturated. The market got oversaturated with zombies. In the gaming world, our market is a much smaller share. But those of us that follow these games, even if we don't play them, but we like to follow what's happening in the gaming world, should we get interested, you notice these things. You'll see these things. You don't necessarily need to bring this in just because Joe Bob over there has a version of his own. But in my opinion, they broke the tone of the game, and they don't fit. They don't fit at all. That's my... So yeah, that's basically my rant. I like Warmachine. I say I liked Warmachine much better in the past. I believe now the attraction to it is kind of fading. I don't know what Privateer Press could have done different. To be honest, if Privateer Press maintains this, as this is the path that they're going to take, then as a consumer, I'm pretty sure that I will stop following them on their path. I enjoy the game. Don't get me wrong, the games I play now are fun, but I don't like the idea of going up against people playing armies that in my opinion, don't fit. I'm not going to say I'm not going to treat... no, I don't want to play a game against you. But it does take away some of the enjoyment for the game. When I played Mike with his Cyrus, it was a very close game. The dice were hot for both of us. But it was just every time I looked at the models, I was just like, yeah, these guys These guys don't belong here. They're in the wrong game. They don't fit. And that, to me, seems like a failure on Privateer Press's part, because they're adding things to the game that, for some people, take the enjoyment away. And I don't think that's a smart choice. I don't think that's a smart business choice. But, this was all just my opinion, so in your eyes, I could be totally just overthinking everything and, just a whiny little pain in the ass. And that's perfectly true. You're probably not wrong. But, I needed a vlog subject, and after playing a tough game of Warmachine, this was the thing that was on my mind, so I'm sharing it with you. So do me a favor, in the comments below, tell me, where did I get something wrong? What am I not seeing in these armies that you see? What is it about the Grimkin, or what is it about Cyrus, or even the Cephalix that draw you further into this game of Warmachine and Hordes? Or heck, tell me what games got you started, and maybe we could get a discussion on those games in the past that either maybe could use a reboot, kind of like how they're rebooting movies these days from 60s, 70s, and 80s, or whatever. Maybe that's something that we could look into, and maybe we could have a discussion on that. Please like the video if you liked the video. Heck, just click down the video if you didn't like it. If you're interested in seeing more discussions that I'll have in the future, click subscribe. I will do my best to get out as many battle reports. I probably only do like one battle report a week. I really don't have that much free time, so whenever Mike or my other friend Rob have time to come over and play a game, I will do my best to put it on camera for you. Otherwise, I'll probably get some more vlogs out there about other random things to talk about. But otherwise, thanks a lot for hanging out on this video, and I will see you next time. Happy gaming, everybody.